Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Alexeyeva. I'm the director of the ADU Resource Center of San Mateo County. The topic of today's webinar is how to hire the right contractor for your ADU. I am joined by John Grishbull of Maxable. He is going to be our fearless guide in today's webinar. I'm going to let him introduce himself in just a few minutes, but I'm going to do a few intros and housekeeping first to get us started. So John, if you could just go to the next slide, please. We know at the ADU Resource Center from talking to lots of homeowners who are at the beginning stages of their ADU projects that one of the first questions and most important questions people have is, how do I find the right team? Finding the right general contractor and surrounding yourself with the right professionals and vendors is a critical component to making sure that your ADU project is successful. And so today we want to spend time really diving into this question of general contractors. So we're going to cover why you would want to hire a general contractor, what even is a general contractor, when the best time to reach out to one is, how do you choose from the wide selection of options available in today's marketplace, how do you compare different options once you have a set of bids in front of you, and we're going to make sure to leave plenty of time for questions and answers at the end of this presentation. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. As I mentioned, we will have Q&A, so we have Q&A enabled today. John and I are going to do our best to monitor the Q&A as we go through the presentation. But if we don't answer your questions during the presentation, we will get to them at the end. So do please write in questions as you have them. We are recording today's webinar, so if you miss some detail or you want to jot something down and you forget, don't worry. This is going to be available to you after the fact. And finally, the ADU Resource Center is the organization that is hosting today's webinar. We are a nonprofit organization focused on supporting jurisdictions and homeowners in San Mateo County to build more ADUs. We do this because we believe that ADUs are a great source of housing in this very economically and job-rich region. We think homeowners should have access to the ability to build an ADU as easily as possible. We think that they're a great source of rental housing, and so we exist purely to support ADU development. As a nonprofit, we don't endorse any particular company or vendor, but I am very thankful to John for joining us today. He has a wealth and depth of experience in this particular area, and I know that we're going to learn a ton from you, John. So thank you very much for your time today. Okay, if you could go to the next slide, I'm just going to give a couple of quick notes about the ADU Resource Center before we get into the meat and potatoes of today's conversation. As I mentioned, we are a nonprofit. We offer a suite of free resources to homeowners focused on the County of San Mateo. All of our resources are available on our website, smcadu.org. There you'll find everything from process guides to information about the local ADU rules and standards in the jurisdictions in San Mateo County, examples of ADU floor plans, stories from neighbors who have built ADUs, and a lot more. So if you are in San Mateo, or if you are not and you're looking for free resources about ADUs, do check out our website. I just want to, in the next slide, call out a few resource highlights that I want to draw your attention to. The first is our ADU guidebook, which is a 60-some-odd page guidebook available on our website. It goes step by step through the ADU process from I'm interested in ADU, what do I do next, to budgeting, design, permitting, and through construction. If you are in San Mateo County, this has specific information to San Mateo County residents who are building ADUs, but it's a great overall guide to the different stages of the ADU process. Again, if you're getting started, not sure where to go next, this is a great resource you can check out. Next thing I want to make you aware of is our free feasibility consults. These are available to residents in most jurisdictions in San Mateo County. So if you do live in San Mateo County, you're at the early stages of investigating an ADU project, go to our website and the contact page on our website, and you can find out more information about signing up for these. They're absolutely free. You get to speak to an ADU specialist for an hour, ask questions, brainstorm your project, and you'll get a follow-up report with specific information and recommendations based on what you discussed. No, nothing we ask of you afterwards except for filling out a short survey about whether the consultation was helpful to you. And if you're in the midst of an ADU project already and you're coming up on issues or snags or challenges, we also offer a free helpline to San Mateo County residents. That information is also available in the same place, so smcadu.org/contact. And the last resource that's available on our website that is particularly helpful and I think pertinent to today's discussion is our ADU calculator. So, one of the things, unfortunately, that people are most surprised by when they're first starting to research ADUs is how expensive an ADU can be. We get a lot of sticker shock experiences when we first start talking to homeowners. And so, if you're just starting out, you haven't started doing a ton of research, this is a great resource for you. You can log in parameters of your project and get some estimates about what you can expect your costs to be, the monthly expenses to be, and what you can envision from an ROI standpoint. So, with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to John, and we are going to get into the topic of today's discussion, which is finding the right general contractor for your ADU. So, John, again, thank you very much for joining, and take it away.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you for having me on here. Before I get going, I just certainly want to say that I am so excited to partner up with you on this. I love what you guys are doing. I think nonprofit organizations in the ADU space is crucial. There's so much disinformation out there. There's so much, unfortunately, ill intent and just scams and confusion in this space because it is still relatively new. And to have a nonprofit organization that has different incentives and motivations with how they operate is so, so valuable because, like you just went through, the resources that you guys have put together are extremely helpful for homeowners along any step in the ADU process. And to know that it's coming from the right place and that there's no bias and that there's no ulterior motive aside from being helpful and providing guidance and resources is just outstanding. So thanks again. And without further ado, my name is John Grishpole. For those of you who don't know me, I am the co-owner of Maxable. Our website is maxiblespace.com. And in brief, we are a one-stop shop to guide homeowners through every step in the ADU process. We do a lot of the similar things that Anna does with this organization, but we operate throughout California and in some capacity throughout the country. So if you need resources, if you need guidance, or if you need an architect, a contractor, a lender, or any other partners in that space, that's really what we're here for as well. Now to get to today's topic, contractors is truly my background. Before Maxable, I have been operating a contractor matchmaking service called Great Builds for years. So I've spent most of my time evaluating contractors, separating the good from the bad, identifying all the issues or potential issues that there can be when evaluating contractors and working with contractors. And truly, I'd say my top skill set is finding a good contractor and helping homeowners understand how to effectively work with them. And that is why I'm particularly excited to discuss this topic for the next 30 to 40 minutes, because I think I saw it in the Q&A, Jessica, who also nerds out about ADUs and contractors and all this stuff. Jessica, me too. I am a huge ADU nerd. So let's go ahead and dive in. So first off, what is a general contractor, and do I really need a general contractor? That is the core of it. A lot of people might think that, I've done a bathroom remodel before. I've replaced the flooring. I ripped out the carpet in my home. I can handle this. Maybe, but also maybe not. An ADU is a very significant project. At the end of the day, your home is one of the biggest investments that you'll make in your life, and you really don't want to jeopardize the value that you have in your property. And if anything, an ADU adds value to your property, so you want to make sure that you do it the right way so that it adds the right amount of value and benefit overall for you and your family and for your property. Now, there's a lot of contractors out there. And if you've started the process of looking for a contractor, you've probably seen signs like these. Sign today, get 20% off. If you sign this contract before I leave in the next 20 minutes, I'll give you another $5,000 discount. Everyone wants a good deal and everyone wants to save money, of course. Like Anna mentioned, there's severe sticker shock sometimes when people start to truly learn about the real costs that go into building an ADU. But I would encourage everyone to practice a little bit of restraint, to understand that if something sounds too good to be true, there's a good chance that it is. So at the end of the day, when you're cutting corners, you might not get great results. Um, a, a project costs what it costs. There is variability depending on how a contractor's business operates, how much overhead they have, the types of finishes, materials you use for the project. But at the end of the day, it costs what it costs. So if you get a bid that is significantly lower than other ones, you are probably signing up for shoddy work, inexperience, tons of change orders throughout the project, your contractor disappearing halfway through and you're left with a half-finished job, or severe delays throughout the project. If any of you have done a remodel or know someone who has, you've probably heard of the many renovation horror stories, and this is a major enough project that it is not one that you want to be one of those stories for. So often I get the question of, well, could I just use a handyman? Like, he knows how to swing a hammer. Can I just use a handyman instead of a contractor? No, you can't. Anyone with a hammer can call themselves a handyman. I'm a handyman. I got a hammer over here. But I am not a licensed Class B general contractor, and that means I do not have the credibility, the legitimacy, or really anything that it takes to be a licensed general contractor. Contractors require insurance, a bond, and a significant level of experience throughout the entire process of the build project to know exactly how things should go and will go throughout the project. So here's an example, a case study. We had a homeowner a few years ago that thought they had hired a general contractor for the project. They said that they were a general contractor. They provided a license number, but they never verified it. And it turned out that that license number was false. It was not a legitimate general contractor. And although things started out great and the homeowner made the first few significant payments up front, the contractor disappeared halfway through. They left the job with half finished, only the framing was up and the foundation, and that was not nearly enough for what they had paid for. And unfortunately, that client of ours had to go back to the drawing board, start from scratch, hire a legitimate general contractor to finish the job, and surely enough, incurred significantly higher expenses because not only did the initial contractor disappear halfway through, but the work that they had completed already was subpar. So a lot of it had to come back down and start essentially from scratch. So one of the benefits that you get when working with a general contractor is you're protected. A licensed general contractor is required to have two types of insurance, both general liability insurance and a surety bond. Both of these things are there to protect them and protect you and protect your property. If anything happens at the job site and they have insurance and they're bonded, then you have potential recourse for if something goes wrong. I'm not sure if I have it on the next slide, but contractors typically also all require what's called workers' compensation insurance. It is only required if that contractor has employees or their own in-house crews. I'll say 90% of general contractors do have some of their own crews. So pretty much every GC should have workers' compensation insurance. If they do not, you should very, very be certain to verify that every single worker that they have on your job site is a licensed subcontractor, because they will carry their own insurance for that situation. Now, you're also getting the experience of a GC. To get a license in the first place, you have to have years of experience, and you need to showcase that you need to take a difficult test. You need to work under someone else typically. So you need to showcase to the state, the California State Licensing Board, that you are qualified and legitimate enough to get that license. And that said, not all general contractors are even the same. You might get a referral from your neighbor, or you might read about a good contractor online, but unfortunately, not all contractors have the same experience. So your neighbor or your family member who just hired this awesome contractor and they did a wonderful job for a kitchen remodel, or they replaced the flooring in your home, that does not mean that they're the right fit to build an ADU. And that's often a mistake that people make. They think, oh, I've used this contractor before. He did a really good job. I'm sure he'd do a good job. But that's not always the case. You want to really make sure that they have the right experience to fit exactly the project that you are hiring them for. So GC that specializes in building ADUs, they handle a lot. There's a lot that goes into it. You're paying a general contractor, one, for their network. They have, like I said, most typically general contractors will have their own crew that does some things and some subcontractors that they work with. Typically, it might be an electrician, a plumber, a landscaper, a carpenter. Every contractor operates a little bit differently, but that's a really important question to ask, and we'll get into tons of great questions to ask later in this presentation. In addition to that, your contractor is strategizing the entire phasing of the project. There's the supply chain of getting the raw materials, ordering it so that everything's delivered on time, making sure that you're also phasing all the different crews to do the work in tandem so that as soon as the foundation is done, you're ready for framing. As soon as framing is done, you're ready to move on to rough. So it's really important that your contractor understands every step-by-step in the process and can orchestrate, puppeteer this entire project effectively from start to finish to ensure that there aren't huge delays in your project, huge issues and errors along the way. That's a little bit more on this. There's inspectors that need to come out to the property. Obviously, you set a certain level of expectations with your client as the general contractor, and you want to make sure you meet those standards. And there's always things that do come up, like weather or failed inspections because the specific inspector who came out was a little bit pickier than the one from 2 weeks ago, or your crew gets sick, or your subcontractor is busy on another job site. So it's really important that your GC has the experience to know how to orchestrate this properly, and more often than not, doesn't just set up a good plan from the beginning, but is really good at dynamically adapting and adjusting that plan as issues arise, as they inevitably will. Finally, it's your contractor's job to keep the project moving. When you hire your contractor, that contract is going to have a fairly structured payment schedule and timeline for the project. Your contractor should be experienced enough to know how long your job should take. Is it going to be 3 months? Is it going to be 6 months or 9 months? And based on that, it's their job to align with that timeline. Of course, things do come up and things do get delayed, but nonetheless, you really want to be able to trust that your contractor has your interest in mind. The last thing that anyone wants, whether it's a contractor or a homeowner, is to stay on site for 12 months longer than originally planned. They're losing money by doing it. You're losing time and mental fortitude by doing that as well. So now that we understand what a GC is and why it's important to hire a general contractor, let's talk about when the right time is to reach out to a general contractor. So this isn't always the case, but this is the best case, is when you already have a full set of construction drawings. That's when you're going to have the most productive conversation with a contractor. I always say that architects are really good at telling you what you can do, what's possible. Contractors are really good at telling you what it's going to cost, and not always vice versa. No offense to any of the contractors or architects on the session. I'm sure you may be excellent at both. But when you have a set of plans, even if they're not fully approved by the city yet, that's when you can share these plans with a contractor, multiple contractors, You can have them come out to the job site to evaluate the space. And then with that information, your contractor can actually put together a very, very thorough and accurate estimate based on all the plan set and the site conditions. Without that, it's really just talking about a dream, a vision, and there can be tons and tons of issues if you put too many eggs in that early basket. Because if you meet with a contractor at the very beginning, you meet with three, you talk about what you want, they're probably all three of those contractors are going to interpret differently what the actual scope is, what the actual project is, and you're going to get radically different bids and radically different results. So best case scenario, although it's not always realistic, best case is meet with contractors once you have a full set of drawings. And I just hinted at it, but it's really important that you get at least 3 bids for any project. At the end of the day, you want to make sure you're getting a fair price. You want to make sure that the bid that you're getting is comprehensive and all-inclusive. And one of the best ways to do that is to get multiple bids. If you have a full set of plans, you share those plans with 3 contractors, those 3 estimates should be all fairly comprehensive, and then you'll be able to get a good sense of the ballpark range of what that project's actually going to cost. You can also, when you have multiple bids like this, you can weed out the underbidding or the radical overbidding. You know, if you have 2 bids, let's say you have these 3 bids, 190, 125, and 202. Is it more likely, and if you were to get 3 more bids, let's say they're all around 200, is it more likely that all the other contractors are ripping you off because the bid's so much higher? Or is it more likely that the 125K bid compared to all the other ones is radically low? It means that that contractor either doesn't have the right experience to know how to effectively bid your project, or they may be intentionally or unintentionally leaving things out of their project scope, of their estimate, and probably planning on sneaking it in later or things like that. It's rare, like I was saying earlier, the project costs what it costs. The materials cost what they cost. Overhead and profit for the contractor is a relatively small percentage of the overall project value. So at the end of the day, getting multiple bids is really good at showing you what the true cost of that project most likely is. And also, it's an opportunity for you to meet different contractors. At the end of the day, you're not hiring a contractor just based on price, or really, you shouldn't be. This is a relationship that you're building. If you hire a contractor early, you're going to be working with them for 6 to 12 months, maybe more. If you hire a contractor once you have plans approved by the city, then you're still going to be working with that contractor for probably 3 to 6 months, if not more. So you want to make sure that it's someone that you get along with, that you have a good working relationship with. And I hinted at this before, it's not if something goes wrong, because I hate to break it to you, something will always go wrong. There will be something that slips between the cracks or a miscommunication between the homeowner and the contractor. So at the end of the day, I always like to say, when something goes wrong, is this a relationship that you see that you can effectively resolve issues with? And that's really, really important. So a few things about how to vet a contractor, some green flags, some good things to look for. You want to make sure that you validate that they have an active license and valid insurance, both workers' compensation and general liability. Those things you can verify on the California State Licensing Board website. You also want to make sure that your contractor has local experience, especially when it comes to ADUs. A kitchen's a kitchen, and permitting a kitchen's fairly simple, but ADU regulations are not radically different, but different enough from city to city, county to county. So if you are hiring a contractor in Beverly Hills, for example, it would be pretty important to make sure that your contractor has experience working with the city of Beverly Hills, getting plans approved, getting permits pulled, working with inspectors in that city. You get a huge leg up when your contractor has that experience. You also want to make sure that your contractor has strong references. I'll get into this shortly, but you want to get references that you can speak with of past homeowners that have worked with this contractor. You want to talk to them one-on-one and get a better understanding of what their experience was like, where their project cost ended up landing at the end of the job, things like that. You want to make sure that you're getting transparent bids. And on the flip side, that your bids aren't vague or simple. For a large scale project like this, I'd say anything over a $10,000, $20,000 project, you want to have a fairly clear, transparent bid. Now, contractors might not break everything down line by line by line. Every single material might not be broken down, but you want to get a good sense of, is my contractor being upfront with me? Is he clear about what this project's going to cost? And anything that I'm going to have to pay for on top of that, is that clear as well? What is the overall cost going to be? Professionalism, of course, is really important, and good communication. Someone who keeps you apprised. I always say that meeting with contractors is kind of like going on a first date. At that first date, everyone's on their best behavior. They all want to impress the other, but how the communication goes after the fact and how the meeting expectations plays out is also really important. And then finally, you want to check their online reputation with a grain of salt, because there's a lot of fake or paid reviews online, but all the websites, so go on Google, go on Yelp, Angie, House, Home Advisor, anywhere that you can find anyone talking about these contractors, read through every single review. The good ones, the bad ones, are the 5-star ones. Do they sound a little bit too good to be true? The 1-star ones, are those a little bit too aggressive? Maybe it was left by a different contractor or something. But either way, it's really important that you get a sense of what everyone is saying, whether, from their perspective of working with them. And the red flags are kind of the opposite of everything that I just went through. But if they're asking for a lot of money up front, if the bids are simple, if they're bad at communicating, or if they can't provide you with references, that's always a red flag for me. And here's a few headlines that I found relatively recently. Tiny home builders, customers ask, where did my $100 million go? Multitasker, a company that was based in San Diego, is getting sued for millions of dollars because, lo and behold, they're ripping homeowners off and selling false hope. So there's more and more and more of these unfortunate stories about contractors ripping homeowners off, disappearing halfway through with all the money, just doing subpar and shoddy work. So it's really, really important now, especially, that you guys take the right attention towards evaluating, vetting these contractors, because this is a huge commitment. You're spending a lot of money on this project, and like I said, you're going to be working with them for a long time. So it's imperative that you vet them as thoroughly as you can to avoid any of these stories. You don't want to become a headline yourself. Now, I found a pretty interesting stat. On the California State Licensing Board website, you can pull every single license that has ever been issued in the state of California, contractor license. So I was only looking at Class B licenses. So these are licenses for a general contractor. And I broke it down over the last 5 years. So between 2020 to the end of 2024, and then the 5 years prior to that, and the 5 years prior to that, all the way back to 30 years ago, which was 1994, and everything before that. It goes over 100 years back. There's some really, really old contractors. They're typically commercial contractors that have been around for over 100 years. So this was a concerning stat. If you see the bar on the very right side, almost 22% of licenses issued overall have all been issued in the last 5 years. What was I saying earlier? It's important that you hire a contractor that has experience, that has done this before, that knows how to look out for things that the average homeowner doesn't. And that can really only come from real experience, real life, doing it over and over and over again. So when I'm vetting a contractor, one of the things that is most important to me is years of experience. I always ensure that my contractor, for the most part, has worked for at least 5 years, but ideally 10, 15, 20 years. You cannot teach that experience. It can only be learned. So this was a little concerning, and this is why it's especially important now, because I believe all of the contractors that were in this previous slide with the horror stories, I believe all 3 of these contractors that were mentioned here were licenses that were issued within the last 5 years. So here at Maxable, this is the thorough vetting process that we do before inviting any contractor into our network. It's everything that we've talked about and more. We do a background check. We do a financial review of the business. We evaluate everything we can find out about them online. We check their references. We speak with multiple homeowners who have worked with them. We interview every single one of the contractors face to face. And we ensure that they meet all of our high, strict standards that they have to, so we can trust that they will uphold their end of the agreement. I want to take a quick break. We've gone through a lot so far. So Anna, maybe we spend a minute or two asking some relevant questions about anything that's been asked recently.
Yeah, and we've gotten some really good questions, so I'm just going to go through from this beginning. So you've talked about the things that contractors you want to look out for: bonding, insurance, licenses. Someone asked, how do you verify this information? So I think you already referenced in your presentation, but I want to reinforce this because it's very important. The Contractors State License Board is the go-to place in if you live in California. And I know, John, if there's anything else you want to say about the actual process of confirming this information.
Yeah, that's it. We'll put a link to the license check page on the CSLB website in the follow-up email so that any one of you can look up your contractors. You can put in their business name, you can put in the first and last name of the owner, you can put in the license number, and it's really, really important that you cross-reference. If you get a business card from a contractor and it has a license number on it and a name and a business name and the owner's name, confirm that it matches the license number and information on the website. I've seen situations where one contractor is using someone else's number on their business card just to show that they seem a little bit more legitimate, but that's not the way to do it. So you look up the license number, you can find the contractor's license page, and it'll tell you if they have insurance, it'll tell you if they have a bond, it'll tell you how many salespeople they have, it'll tell you how many different businesses they operate in addition to this contractor license. So one thing to, a little pro tip, if you see a contractor and in their other licenses, you see 3, 5, 7, 10 different companies or licenses that they operate, that's usually a bad sign. That usually means that they're an RMO and they're not actually in the business. They are just putting their name on the business and letting someone else operate it.
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
Related to this question about where to find good information, someone asked an interesting question. I'm not sure the answer to it. I wonder if you have ideas. What's a good website or a reliable source to keep updated with news, like the tiny anchored homes examples? What's like a source of most up-to-date topical news related to contractors and ADUs?
Well, I'd like to say that you and I both operate wonderful websites where we do our best to stay on top of these things.
Yeah.
And on our Maxable website, we post new blogs every week about what we're hearing, whether it's new ADU regulations or new ADU issues coming up or any other changes like that. So I'd say check out our websites, get on our listservs. Our newsletters are both really informative with regard to that. Otherwise, it's hard to say. There's not a central source. I don't want to create a website of all the ADU bad news that's out there, but it should be. But I'd say Google's probably the best place, or your local periodicals. If you saw some of the articles that I mentioned were published in local papers, the San Diego Tribune or, the LA Times, wherever it is. It's not all, I guess LA Times is pretty big, but it's not always getting to the big widespread until it's really scary and there's hundreds or thousands of victims to these issues. So I'd say your best chance, and honestly, Facebook. I don't love to say it, but Facebook, there's some really great groups on Facebook that get the voice of the people. How to ADU is one of my favorite groups. And there's a lot of contractors and also a lot of homeowners in that group. So, and as soon as anyone has a bad experience or a bad situation. Anchored Tiny Homes was one of the major ones that has been fairly recently. A lot of people in that group put a call out to action of, hey, look out for these guys. Um, I don't think they're very friendly with that kind of approach because anyone can say that. But anyway, yeah, there's no central source of bad contractor info out just yet, but I'd say Google would be your best friend there.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that you make a great point. Obviously, a plug for ADU Resource Center San Mateo County, for Maxable. We all have social media presences. So if you follow social media for any, reputable organization, if there's a big story out there, they're probably going to be covering it, on Facebook, LinkedIn, et cetera. I know the ADU Resource Center does.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move on. So there's someone in LA County who says, I found a great contractor, but my concern is timeline for approval with the city. Why does it take so long for city to give approval? This is a little bit outside of what we're talking about today, but I do want to let you know when it comes to state law in terms of what your local jurisdiction is required to do. So they have a timeline that the state requires them to follow, which is once you submit an application for a permit or your contractor submits an application on your behalf, they have 30 days to review it and deem whether or not the application is complete or not. And then they have 60 days from the time that you submitted the application to either approve or deny it. Now, a lot of local jurisdictions don't necessarily stick to those timelines, but you should be aware that that is the state law. So if you're not getting a response back from your local building or planning department, it's worth pinging them and saying, hey, what about the 60-day timeline? And see what they say. It's always good to know what the state law is. Okay, so then we have a couple of questions in the chat about bids and contracts. I'm thinking we may want to save them because that's where you're going to go next.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we keep going and then we'll keep monitoring the questions and get to the rest of them after.
Perfect. Yeah, let's finish up the rest of the presentation, and we can open up Q&A for the rest of it. So we've already understood why a GC is important, and then we've talked about what a GC does and how to approach finding a GC, what to look for when evaluating contractors. So let's say you just reached out to 3 to 5 contractors and you invite them for a site visit. You're setting up your initial contractor meeting. And whether you've done a renovation, a home remodel or not, this is a little bit different, but a lot of the same. And I'm going to walk you through kind of what to expect, how to prepare, and so on. So first off, what should you prepare? Whether you have a full set of plans completed or not, whether you have an architect or not, you should at very least come to that meeting with your goals and your must-haves for the project. If you want a 600 square foot, 2-bed, 2-bath, share that. If your must-haves include having a washer and dryer, or if you need to have a rooftop deck, come prepared with that. And I would say put it all in writing, type it up, print out 3 to 5 copies, and hand your goals and must-have and any parameters you have for your project, hand that to the contractor during your meeting so that there's no confusion after the fact. There's no, what did they say? You don't have to worry about it. Everyone has the exact same information. In addition to that, again, if you have design plans, certainly give it to them. If you don't, draw a little sketch. Pull up Google Maps and trace out your property, put a little box for where your home is, and then whether you want to, I guess if you are just converting your garage, not imperative, but if you want to put it in the back corner or attach it to the back of your home, just give them a little sketch so that you can show them roughly what you're thinking. The more that they have, the better. And it is important to share your range of budget, even if it's not a specific number. On one hand, I understand all the time homeowners don't want to share their number because as soon as they say it, they think their contractor is going to align to that number. But it is really important, maybe working with teams like ours that have your best interests in mind to give you a helpful understanding of what to expect for your budget. So you can come up with, okay, if I'm considering low end, if I'm considering for a rental, or if I want something luxury and high end and beautiful, either way, coming prepared to that meeting with what your thinking about spending, what you're comfortable spending, or what you can get approved to budget for the project, that'll share with the contractor where your head is at. That'll help them understand if they're even the right fit to work with you and things like that. And then also prepare a list of questions, which I'll get into. It's okay if you don't have answers to all their questions. This is just the first step in the process, and there's a lot of unknowns on both ends. A good contractor should not pressure you to commit on the spot. It always makes me really uncomfortable when a homeowner meets with a contractor first time. They're talking for maybe an hour, and the contractor convinces that homeowner, oh, well, I can give you 25% off, but only if you sign right now. That's a scam. It's almost always a scam. That contractor is just a little bit desperate for your business or using high pressure sales tactics. I don't like that. I don't typically encourage that. And then keep in mind that like I said, it's like dating. You are evaluating them just as much as they're evaluating your project. You want to make sure that they're a good fit for you. It's a good working relationship, that their budget's going to come in on time, but they're also evaluating you in the same way. They want to make sure that you're going to be a good client to work with. A contractor's more happy, more willing to work with a client if they're an easy client or they can get along well or communicate effectively. So what to expect during that meeting? It's really these four things. One, obviously the contractor's going to want to visit your property or at very least review your plans, walk through the property, get a sense of what the space is like. That'll give them an understanding of where the trenching might need to go, how much space is on the lot once you're actually physically there, if there's a grade or a slope on the lot that may cause complications, or if there's power lines going above. All these things that they can look and feel and sense is one of the main elements of a site visit. And then you'll sit down and talk about the project, go through the notes that we just talked about and tell them what your timeline is, what your goals are, what your priorities are for the project and things like that. You'll have an opportunity to ask them questions. They'll ask you questions about all these things. And then typically any contractor who's experienced with ADUs should give you some initial feedback of, oh yeah, this should be feasible. Based on what you've described, it should take about this long. Here's roughly what I expect it to cost, that type of thing. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these questions. You can see them in the slides and in the recording that we share after the fact, but it's really important that you ask your contractors really good questions to get a sense of their experience, their background, how they would approach your project, how they handle contracts and change orders, how they operate their business from start to finish. These are really, really important things. And the note that I will touch on down at the bottom is not just what they say, but how they say it. Are they, trying to speed through these questions? Are they there to partner with you and really sit down and educate and make sure that you have a good understanding? Are they clear and respectful? The way that these conversations go early on is a really good telltale sign of how it's going to go down the road. So now you met with contractors, you waited a couple weeks, they sent you bids, but now you got a bunch of different bids. They all look totally different. They're all totally different numbers. How do you compare them? There's no good news. There's no cookie cutter formula. It's not that type of industry, I'll say. Every contractor builds their estimates a little bit differently. Many of them use software. Some of them still use Word document or whatever. There's all different types of approaches to compiling a bid, even within a traditional estimate. So there's no standard format, and that makes it really, really confusing to compare one to the other. So look at these two example bids. They're small. You don't need to read them too much, but one bid came out to $198 on the left side, and the bid on the right came out to $215. Now, obviously, between the two, the job on the right's more expensive, so I should just hire the contractor on the left. I'm going to save 15 grand, no question. Unfortunately, if you read a little bit closer, which again, you may not see all of it, but the proposal on the right includes significantly more things than the proposal on the left. So although, yes, the bid is higher on the right-hand side, it's actually a better deal. And look, it doesn't mean that this contractor is trying to scam you. Just because one bid's higher doesn't mean that it's, any foul play necessarily. There's a lot of unknowns. Even once you have completed plans, there's a lot of unknowns going into that project. So contractors essentially build their estimates based on their experience, their understanding of the scope of work, and understanding of the existing space, and factoring in all the different levels of complexity and other aspects of the project. So step one, you want to collect all of your detailed estimates, not the first one that you get in the preliminary conversation of here's a price range, but the full detailed estimate. And then you want to use a bid comparison tool like this one here, either in a spreadsheet or a tool that I'm working on behind the scenes that I'm going to be ready to announce in the next week or two. You'll be able to upload all of your estimates that you've received. You can upload your plan set as well if you have one, and it'll give you a full report that looks something similar to this of here's what's included in this estimate, here's what's missing from this estimate, and you want to make sure that you are able to look at 3 identical or very similar estimates. So if there's anything missing from any of the bids, you want to go back to the contractor and say, hey, can you clarify this detail? Hey, I didn't notice you mentioned flooring in the estimate. Is that included or is that separate? And then make sure you review the bid to ensure that you are comparing a similar scope of work, that there's a relatively clear pricing breakdown, ideally not just one number at the bottom, and allowances and exclusions, which means an allowance is I'm working into the price of this budget a shower stall. That shower stall is going to cost $800. So that is already included within the budget that I'm providing you. Whereas an exclusion is this is not included in my bid, and you're going to have to pay extra for that. So keep that in mind. Also review for outliers like we showed earlier. If there's one bid that is radically lower than 3 other ones, they're missing something in the estimate or they're not experienced enough to compile an accurate bid. And also, like we've been talking about already, professionalism, clarity. Is it a professional bid? Is it well compiled? Or is it something that looks like they spent 5 minutes on and just busted out the door? Those are really important factors to evaluate. Like we're saying, you want to be evaluating everything you can about these contractors and getting a really good sense of what it's going to be like working with them. And if they're professional on the bid and professional in the contract, it's a good sign. Now, what to expect when you are reviewing an ADU construction contract. I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but again, it'll be in the deck afterwards. You want to make sure, like we've talked about, there's a detailed scope of work. Really important that whether every price is itemized or not, you want to make sure that there's a fair and reasonable payment schedule. The contract should break down what's being paid at what point. You should only be paying for work after it's completed. You don't want to pay a huge sum up front. You want to make sure you leave at least 10%, 5 to 10% at the very end as punch list, and make sure that it's fair and reasonable and consistent. And one of the most important things to look out for is what is their change order process? If something does change halfway through the job, or if the homeowner has a change, I decided I like this other flooring instead, can we change that? How do they handle change orders? Who's responsible for notifying and approving change orders and everything like that? And then a couple red flags to look out for. If they don't mention change orders or permits, that's a red flag to look out for. Like I said, if there's large upfront payments or a significant deposit, that's a red flag. And also, if there's no contract at all, if there's a short time frame for a deadline of high pressure, you've signed now, sign today, and this contract only lasts for 3 days or it expires, those are shady practices generally. So one more about ADU pricing. Again, I'm not going to go through every single detail, but some of the main things that go into the cost of an ADU is or really what's driving higher costs than average is site access or trenching. If you put the ADU too far in the back of the property, you may have to trench all the way to the front of the property for utilities and for sewage, so that can increase the cost. Foundation and grading, like I said, if there's a slope on your property, that can be really expensive. Permit fees, city-specific requirements. Some cities require some additional things that can be expensive. And then also, there's a lot of demand. There's not that many builders out there. Labor rates are going up. Material availability is going down. And all of that points towards costs going up. So in the Bay Area specifically, for those of you in San Mateo or in the surrounding community, the baseline is it's pretty expensive up there. It's about $625 per square foot as the baseline for a ground up detached standard ADU. Now these prices do vary significantly throughout California and certainly throughout the rest of the country. But for a garage conversion, you can expect it to be somewhere between $250 to $450 a square foot, depending on quality of materials and finishes and complexity. And when it comes to new construction ADU, it's a much wider range because it depends on the size, it depends on a lot of other parameters, but you can expect anywhere from $350 on the low end, $750 on the high end per square foot. So the cheapest ADU you can expect to build is going to be around $120, $125 all in. And the most expensive ADU that I've ever seen was $775. It was a 1,200 square foot, 2-story, beautiful, marble, everything. So it was absolutely gorgeous, but very, very expensive. And let's see, how do I find someone that specializes in ADUs, has a good track record, has experience in my city, is going to fit within my budget, has an active license and bonded and insured, but isn't busy for the next year or 5 years because they're so popular? That's what we're here for. Again, both of our entities are really good at, or I guess that's what Maxible's here for. I won't speak for you, Anna. We've built a network of vetted contractors throughout California. We've done everything that we've talked about earlier about separating the good from the bad, and we constantly evaluate every contractor in our network. As soon as we introduce GC to a new client, we get feedback from that client. As soon as a client hires a contractor, we get feedback throughout, and at the end of a project, our top priority is only partnering with the best of the best contractors in every community. So that's our top focus, that's our top priority, and we really get the importance of hiring the right contractor, not just a good contractor. There is such thing, but that's not always relevant. It really comes down to hiring the right contractor that is the right fit for your home, for your family, and for your project. We've helped people all over California, up in the Bay Area, down in San Diego, all throughout Los Angeles. So we have the experience, we know all the questions to ask, we have the right guidance to support you through every step in the process. So here's some of the homeowners we've worked with throughout the country or throughout the state. Here's a client in the Bay Area. Here's Felicia that we worked with in San Diego for her project. Here's Tony and Gloria for a home that we worked with actually down the street from me in Los Angeles. And at the end of the day, like I said, every contractor, every architect, every partner that we choose to invite into our network, they've been thoroughly screened and vetted to ensure that homeowners don't have to worry about picking their general contractor. That doesn't need to be the hardest part. So it always starts with getting in touch with us. We'll connect you with the right ADU architect for your project based on your location. Once those plans are developed, or if you want to get the ball rolling, we can put you in touch with multiple contractors to come out to your property, give you estimates. You can review all those bids with our ADU experts, myself included. And then once you hire your favorite contractor and or your favorite architect, we stay involved every step of the way just to make sure that everything is going swimmingly. So sign up today. The first step with beginning the process with Maxible is always just starting by booking a call with our team. If you go to our website, you can click the form to give us some info about your goals and your priorities for your project. Otherwise, if you want to hit the ground running, book a call with our team. We'll provide you all the guidance, support, resources, and everything that you'll need to have an effective and stress-free ADU project. Wow, 11:01, nailed it. So we've hit the end of our scheduled timeline. For any of those of you that have somewhere to run, feel free. But I think there's a ton more questions that we can go
Yeah,
through. I'm available. So Anna, if you're around, I'm happy to just power through some more of these questions.
let's do it. And yes, if you have to drop, we'll have a recording of this available so you can pick up on your own time. That was a ton of information. Thank you, John. Let's go to a few questions we had about bids. Someone asked, would you want a list of subcontractors included with the GC bid? Can you talk about that? What does that look like when you're getting a bid from a GC?
It's um, encouraged. Not every contractor will share their deck because at the end of the day, it is a level of trust. They just met you. They don't know what you're going to do with that list. You might go and tell another contractor, go work with these subs. I like these guys. So it's not always standard, but it's a really good question to ask. And again, it's all about communication and trust. So at the same time, if you ask that question and your contractor is very forthcoming with it and happy to show you all of his subs and happy to show you all their licenses and their credibility and how long they've worked with them for, that's a really good sign that they're approaching the relationship with honesty and openness. And it's likely that they trust you enough that they're willing to share that information with you.
Yeah. We had another question about getting a bid versus cost. So how do you negotiate the bid versus actual cost, which I think gets to this question of, okay, how do you control that ultimate cost from the bid process?
That's that's a complicated question. I'd say that the more refined the project is, the tighter that project cost is going to be. Like I said, if you meet with contractors day one, you don't have plans, you're just working on a vision, those costs are going to be all over the place. It might be difficult for you to even understand what will be realistic. But once you do have a completed plan set, or you have some degree of clarity on, I want 600 square feet, it's going to be in this section of the lot. Here's what it's going to look like roughly from the inside. Here's the types of finishes I want. The more you can provide your contractor or all of your contractors, the tighter those estimates will be. Um, Understand that during that initial meeting, your contractor is likely going to give you a range. They might say, that should cost, it should be somewhere between 175 and 225. If you're comfortable with that, then I would suggest taking that next step and getting plans drawn up based on that. Ideally, if you have multiple contractors telling you roughly the same price range, that should give you enough confidence that that's likely going to be accurate enough.
Hmm. We have someone had someone ask, should I hire a family GC?
Ah, I love it. At your own risk. It depends how much you value the relationship and how much you trust their experience. I've seen a lot of horror stories of hiring family to do professional work, whether it's in construction or anything else, and it's a gray area. I mean, I run this business with my uncle, so I am the first one to support working with family and keeping things in the family. But that's where it can also get a little bit sticky about, hey, this, you said this would be done last week, like you're dragging your feet, like what's going on? And then he's got to come over for a family dinner, and that's a little awkward. So it can be difficult. I would still say whether they're family, whether it's a recommendation from a neighbor, anything like that, do the same due diligence that you would if you just met them off the street. And if you can make sure that they're qualified and credible and have a proven track record of good experience, then I would be happy to work with family. If I am willing to cut some corners because they're family and I think they're going to give me a good deal or something like that, I might be a little apprehensive. And at the end of the day, I talked about contracts and there are some questions about contracts too. That contract is fine, but you want to make sure that you trust the person, because a contract is only useful once it's too late. You don't want to take your cousin to court. You don't want to sue your cousin for $50,000 because of X, Y, and Z. So first and foremost, do the vetting regardless of who they are.
Hmm. Um, okay, we have a question related to contracts now. What's the best incentive to have the contractor finish on time? Are they always late? How best to, what's, I think the best thing to include in the written contract? I know you covered some of that already, but I think timeliness is maybe what you could speak to.
Yeah, I'd say there's best case scenario and then there's what's realistic. I have seen some situations where contractors and homeowners have worked in clauses for the contract that will penalize the contractor for every day or every week that the timeline is extended. It's really difficult to find a contractor that is willing to agree to those terms because things happen. Like I said, there's some delays that are entirely the contractor's fault, like they forgot something or they screwed something up. But there's a lot of other delays that are not at all the contractor's fault, like an inspector having to reschedule or a weather delay with the rain where they need to give a few days for the ground to dry before pouring the foundation, right? So there are different elements you can work into a contract to protect yourself and protect the project timeline. Honestly, ignoring the actual contract for a moment, I would say the best way to ensure that things stay according to timeline and according to schedule is one, speak with multiple references. If you talk to 5 references of homeowners who had ADUs built and all 5 of them said, oh, if they finished within a month of when they said they'd be done, that's going to be way more valuable than any clause that you put in a contract. And further, I would say during the project, that's something we didn't talk about today. During that project, although yes, you're paying them, you're hiring them to manage the job, the more involved you are in the project throughout the process, the more control relatively that you'll have of the timeline and things like that. One of the things that can extend the timeline is errors or complications or, oh, contractor, I told you to put this over here. Why'd you do that a week ago? If you meet with your contractor every week and have a site walk and evaluate all the work that's been done, go through the high level plan of, okay, what do we do this week? What's the plan for next week? That is one of the best ways to make sure that your project stays on track is by you taking an active role in the project.
Yep. It's all about managing the relationship, right? Um,
Exactly.
I have a question that came in around the advantages or disadvantages of contractors working with an architect before. What about a designer if you're using one? So I think can you speak a little bit to the relationship between the architect and the contractor? I know that's a really important relationship if you are using an architect.
Yeah, it's imperative. So there's really 3 different approaches to how these relationships work. The premium, not necessarily premium, that's not the right word for it. The ideal situation often is what's called a design build firm. That is one company where they have a licensed architect, designers, and a licensed general contractor all under one roof. I say that that's typically best case scenario because they work together every day. They work in the same office. They do a lot of all the same jobs together. So they know exactly how to communicate, they know how to work together, and they know what to expect when it comes to budget, when it comes to designing, and so on. On the opposite end of that is your independent contractor and an independent architect, where the contractor says, I don't have any relationships. You get the plans, come to me when they're done, and I'll bid on them. There's nothing wrong with that, but that is, I'd say, typically the most cost-effective approach. And if you, for example, have an architect friend or an architect that you've worked with in the past and you love them, and you're just going to work directly with that architect, then that's when that relationship can be most effective. And then I would say there's the in-between. There is the contractor that is just a general contractor. However, they've been in business for 15 years and they have an architect that they've brought all of their work to. That is, I'd say, the happy medium between between these two, because you're not paying the premium that typically comes with the overhead of a design build firm, but also here you know that there's some existing relationship that you are getting from the get-go. So it's always a chicken or the egg conversation. Whenever I talk to homeowners who are just beginning their project, I typically recommend that they meet with one or two architects and also begin the relationship with a few contractors as well, because sometimes those contractors will have unique perspectives. Many of those contractors will have architect relationships in place, whether or not they're a design build firm. So getting multiple perspectives on, like I said earlier, architects are best at telling you what's possible. Contractors are best at telling you what it's going to cost. So the earlier you begin those conversations and those relationships, the more transparency and clarity there's going to be throughout the project. The last thing that you want is to work with an architect to develop the plans for the project that you are absolutely in love with, and you pay all the fees to the city and get those plans approved. And then the contractor, you meet with 5 contractors and they bid on those plans, and now those are 3 times the budget that you were expecting. It's a $350,000 job instead of a $175,000 job. I've seen that before, and you certainly want to avoid that. So although the ideal time to bring a contractor is when you have a finished plan set, I'd say it's really important to at least begin those conversations and have some perspective from both architectural and the construction side.
Let's talk about price really quickly. Someone asked, what is the average charge in percentage terms for GC? I think I'm interpreting that to mean what percentage of the overall ADU project is going to be going to the GC, unless you have a different interpretation of that question.
I'd say most of your money is going to the GC. If the question is what fee do they take? I'd like, as far as profit and overhead and management fee, I'd say it's common to see anywhere from 15% on the low end to 30% on the high end. And beware, while we're talking about that, the proposals that you get from contractors may or may not include a specific line item. Again, that's really the whole conversation around transparency and clarity. Not all contractors love to bake in their, or to line item their fee. It's not necessarily a shady thing, just some are more open about it than others. If there's no line item on your contract or on your proposal that says DC fee or profit and overhead, you should know that his profit and overhead is worked into the rest of the figures on your proposal.
Mm-hmm. We have a couple of questions, a number of questions that have come in around different types of ADUs. What's a junior ADU? We have a number of questions specific to garage conversions. I think, we're already 14 minutes over, so I'm going to say we'll punt on those. The ADU Resource Center did do a webinar recently about junior ADUs and conversions with an architect who has done a bunch of those. So I do encourage you look in the Q&A at the link that I posted. A junior ADU could be a really great opportunity for someone who has a space in their home. It's very quickly, it's essentially a conversion of the existing space in your primary dwelling, or if you have an attached garage, you can convert it. It can be up to 500 square feet. It's typically a less expensive option, so something to consider. We have a number of questions that came in around the pricing for garage conversions or conversion ADUs. I don't know, John, if you want to speak more about this, but my general advice is it can be really complicated, right? Like if you have an old garage built in 1940 where it needs to be totally demolished, foundation needs to be redone, you're not going to get a ton of cost savings on that. So it really depends on the existing structure on the property. I don't know if there are any other general pieces of advice you'd give on pricing for conversions.
I can't give general pricing because it depends where you are, it depends what you have, like you said. So take advantage of the free resources. We both have amazing articles that are location specific about generally what a garage conversion costs or what an ADU costs in Southern California or in the Bay Area in San Mateo. And also book a free call with either one of us. If you are in San Mateo County, book a call with Anna's team. If you are anywhere else in California, book a call with my team on the Maxable website. We'll look at your specific property. We'll look at all the details to make sure that we give you an accurate answer, not a generalized answer that is good enough for California or anywhere else in the country for that matter.
Absolutely. And then last thing, last set of questions. We had a few questions come in about Maxable, so I want to give you just a chance to clarify. So a few things people asked, how do you vet contractors that use prefab, panelized, modular might be less relevant. And then have you ever removed a contractor from the Maxable network because you got negative feedback about them?
Yeah, so when it comes to prefab, it's not very common that a prefab company is also a contractor. There are some of those. However, typically a prefab manufacturer is a warehouse or a front end or a partnership with a warehouse where they just sell the units. Some of them partner with local contractors to install them. Some of them say, it's on you. We'll send you the unit. You got to figure everything else out to do all the utilities and site prep for it with the foundation. So we evaluate prefab companies. However, we are not typically vetting contractors that use prefab. We're just vetting contractors. And if they have prefab experience and they've done many of them in the past, then we're happy to work with them as long as they meet the rest of our standards. But I wouldn't say that vetting a contractor that uses prefab is any different than vetting a contractor with ADU experience of any kind. I see a question here about, is there a fee to use Maxable? And, one more just overview of what we do and how we can help. My company, Maxable, is a completely free service. We're here to provide you information, guidance, resources through every step in your ADU process, whether it's getting information and understanding how to find a contractor, what to expect for your ADU project, or if you're ready to get the ball rolling and need to get in touch with legitimate architects, qualified, vetted general contractors, that's exactly what we're here for. Book a call with our team and we'll give you a full understanding of what the relationship looks like. And yes, it is free if we follow along. If you do end up hiring any of the architects or contractors that we introduce to you, we stay involved every step of the way until the job is fully completed. We want to make sure that you're getting everything that you expect out of those partners that you hire, and we understand the knowledge imbalance, the fact that architects, contractors, they do this every day. Most homeowners don't. So we're doing our best to work as an intermediary, as a liaison, to ensure that the quality standards that we set for the members in our network is held. And to answer that question about bad contractors, yes, we have removed a few contractors from our network over the past years that we've been operating. At the end of the day, a contractor is still a human being. There was one contractor that we worked with for many years, and they did outstanding work for the first 3 years. And then, unfortunately, he got divorced with his wife, and he got sick, and it really impacted the quality of the work that he was doing. And unfortunately, we got some negative feedback about how he was working and the quality of the work that he was doing, and we had to make the difficult decision to remove him from the network. And there have been some situations like that in the past. And like I said, we're evaluating these contractors every time that we communicate with them, every time that homeowners give us feedback about them. So when it comes to hiring a contractor, you can read reviews online, which may or may not be entirely accurate, but we're getting the voice of the customer. We're getting as close to the pulse of the quality of that contractor as we can, because we know what they're doing, and the contractors also have a vested interest in us liking them and us wanting to keep working with them. So not only do our contractors have to make sure that they make homeowners happy, but they have to meet our expectations and our standards as well.
Great. Well, John, I think we could stay on here for another 40 minutes, but I'm going to call it. We've had a number of questions about the recording. We will be sending the recording around. You can reference any of this after the fact. And like John said, we are here as resources. The AD Resource Center, again, targeted towards San Mateo County residents, but all of the resources on our website are totally free and generally generalizable across California. John talked about how you could get in contact with Maxable if you have questions about getting in contact with actual professionals. So thank you very much. With that, I'm going to wrap up the call. Thanks for everyone for joining. We hope that this was a useful session for you, and wishing you the best of luck with your ADU projects.